The Lamborghini Urus has been a hit for the brand, and it's become a mainstay in pop culture as well. However, on paper, its similarities to the Germans are unmistakable. So, is it worth, in some cases, twice as much money? Well, let's try to find out. If you haven't done so already, please consider subscribing and hitting that bell. That way you get high quality content and I get closer to making this my full-time job. Thank you. Now back to the review. Now I'm going to keep this one short and sweet because you guys are probably just going to care about how this drives more than anything else. Now my favorite highlight here is the ground clearance. So you're going to have around 6.5 inches of ground clearance in its Corsa mode or the race mode. However, you can have more ground clearance than a Toyota 4Runner if you put it in its off-road mode, which is about 9.8 inches of ground clearance. Another thing that I love about this particular model is the blue Astrios color. Walking around the side of the Urus, you will find 21-inch wheels on the base model. However, the owner of this one tells me that finding a base Urus is practically impossible. In case you were wondering, the MSRP after destination on the lowest spec Urus is in the low 220s in the US. At least you get standard carbon ceramic brakes with 17.3-inch rotors on the front, or quite literally the largest rotors ever fitted to a production car. Because how else are you going to stop a nearly 5,000-pound hunk of Italian flashy metal that is capable of 190 miles per hour? Do you need more swagger from your Urus? The new Pearl Capsule package equips the Lambo utility vehicle with a gloss black roof and black accents on things like the rear diffuser and spoiler, and throws a splash of that color on the inside as well. There's also the Graphite Capsule package, which uses matte colors instead and drops the gloss black accents for the most part. Around the rear, the Urus continues with its crispy lines and becomes slightly more reminiscent of the RSQ8 with which it shares its platform. You do still get niceties like a hands-free power rear tailgate. Before we continue, I'd like to give a huge shout out to my generous friend Edwin for letting me test his Lamborghini for this review. On the interior of the Urus, if you've spent a lot of time in Audi products, you're going to be very familiar with this infotainment style and the screen technology here. However, the overall look is quite its own, especially this whole shifter control down here, which I'll go into in a second. You're going to have some of the highest quality materials in here. However, you're still going to see some Audi switchgear here with the plastics, which is slightly disappointing at this kind of price tag. However, the stitching everywhere looks great. And this red interior also really pops, and it doesn't look tacky too. And there's padding everywhere that you'd really want it to be, and the perforated steering wheel feels very nice in the hand, as you would, again, really expect. Like, this is very much the it better be good kind of interior, and for the most part it won't let you down, and it has all of the modern conveniences that some other elite brands really don't have. For instance, Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, and just an easy to use interface. And that's one of the big benefits to Lambo's ties with the VW group. The UI feels like a layered version of Audi's MMI. It's quick and pretty easy to use. I do wish it felt a little bit more special. The base sound system is apparently underwhelming. However, Lamborghini offers their Sensinum speaker system, which provides a more studio reference type sound, and then an ultra punchy and powerful Bang & Olufsen 3D advanced sound system. This is similar to the ones that you would find in the top level Audis, and it is phenomenal. Now up front, base, you're just going to have heated front seats. However, if you get the fully electric package, you're going to get heated, ventilated, and massaged front seats. And you even get adjustable bolstering that can either hug you like your aunt at a Christmas party to keep you secure during hard corners, or it can lay off for more of a gentle cruiser effect. Now, when it comes to space, I am 6'3", and I fit quite well. I'm going to put myself in a comfortable position and see if I can hop in the back. Back here, I have more than enough room for my legs. Headroom is slightly tight, however, the roof carries back just far enough where I can scrape by. And the materials back here are largely really good. I love the Alcantara on the side of the door. You still get the nice stitching and the soft touch for your elbows. The back of the seat is not the cheapest thing that I've witnessed in even an Audi product. However, I do wish it had a little bit softer material. But overall, I can't really complain too much about this back seat when most supercars, well, they don't have any to speak of. Heated rear seats are not standard unless you get the 4-seat configuration. This is a 5-seat and it does not have them, but they are available. Additionally, the panoramic sunroof is not standard. However, it is only a $2,800 option. I don't think there's a way for me to open it. All right, whenever you're ready.
Is he talking? Or?
Yeah, but he's talking. I'll give him like 5 seconds. There was one time where he was just in there. Couldn't find the release.
1 minute, 37 seconds later.
I didn't see where the release was.
I didn't either. It must be in there somewhere.
I don't think there's a way for me to open it from the inside.
Yeah.
So the back of the Lamborghini Urus is more accommodating than I was originally thinking. However, you can fold down the rear seats and you have quite a bit of room back here. You even have the ability to raise and lower the suspension from the rear of the vehicle. That way you can really access every last ounce of space in your Urus. Definitely enough for a weekend excursion, and maybe even with 4 passengers. And that's something that you can't say about literally any other Lamborghini outside of maybe the ML or the LM002 or something like that. An old tank that they built in the 80s.
Oh yeah, LM02 sounds right.
However, unlike that beast, this is quite good to drive. So let's see how it truly handles. In order to get into drive, just pull the pedal. And if you're, depending on the mode you're in, you'll either go into first or second gear. Underneath the hood of the Lamborghini Urus is a 4-liter twin-turbo V8. It pumps out 641 horsepower and 626 pound-feet of torque. Now, that's about 50 horsepower more than an RSQ8, but where you're going to find more of a difference is tuning. Despite the 50 horsepower difference, they both come with the 4-liter twin-turbo V8 and an 8-speed automatic. In fact, they even share the same gear ratios and final drive ratio. Still, the Urus feels more eager than any Audi I have driven, and most people who have driven the RSQ8 and Urus come to the same conclusion. At an idle, this kind of reminds me of some of the older AMG products with the V8 sound. And under harder acceleration, definitely get a lot of Audi RS7. It's just a ton louder than the SQ7. So just like a GTI, this also pipes in noise, and it's not too obnoxious. However, it's very noticeable even to the untrained ear. Now for this 0 to 60, I've shut off air conditioning. I'm going to put it into Corsa. Now I'm not going to do a manual mode, and then as long as I have my foot depressed on the brake, mash the gas, it'll let me know that launch control is activated and we'll be good to go. Zero to 60 came out in about 3.3 seconds. That is the fastest that I've ever gotten. We're gonna do one more run, same procedure.
Wow.
So end result is 3.39 seconds, and I feel like I probably could have gotten an extra 1/10 off of that had it let boost hang on for a little bit longer. And my GoPro footage shows that barely any boost was really building while the launch control was activated. And it doesn't help that the DA was 2,700 feet. I got a 3.5 second run from the RS5, but that actually had a negative DA, so the Audi was breathing far more ideal air. There are videos out there of Grand Cherokee Trackhawks beating the Urus in the quarter mile. Anything with a ton of horsepower and all-wheel drive is going to make your stomach twist. However, it's much more tricky to make an SUV handle corners than it is to make them stupid quick. Since this weighs more than a Toyota 4Runner and sits up much higher than any sports car, I assumed this would feel the same, but I couldn't have been more wrong.
The most recent kind of super SUV, if you even want to call it that I've driven is the Audi SQ7. And that's not too shabby with 500 horsepower and still a sport-tuned suspension. However, where the Urus really starts to differentiate itself from vehicles like that is around corners. The steering itself is very, very precise. I mean, it's weird because you're sitting so high up. However, the body roll is just like almost non-existent, rivaling that of definitely the Audi RS5 that I drove in March. And it pulls to the red line, but you don't really need to do that. It's not quite as responsive with the paddle shifters as a dual clutch, like a performance-oriented dual clutch, but it's still pretty good. And the shifts aren't quite as like snappy. I'm trying to just shift as fast as it can, which is why it's more rough in the Corsa mode. It's extremely buttery smooth if you put it into its smoothest setting for the power or for the transmission. And I'm using these paddle shifters, which I am so glad they didn't skimp on this and throw in the RS paddle shifters. I am not a huge fan of those. Now, it'd be cool if they had column-mounted ones like Aventador and the Huracan. However, this works too, and it keeps them in the more practical spot for most case scenarios and not track driving. And they just look cool. They don't look like those just plastic tack-on ones that are on even some of the more high-end Audi products.
Now, when it comes to the actual shifting, you can tell that the Trans really tries to bang off the gears in Corsa mode when hauling ass. However, it feels just a little slower than great DCTs like Porsche's PDK or BMW's units. For this review, I didn't really get to push the Urus's handling capabilities. Busy, sometimes wet, and pothole-ridden roads prevented me from this. Expect me to hoon it down the line with the 2022 model when I will hopefully be able to do a full review on some great roads. Still, this time around I got to test some of the performance, but I got a full report of comfort on poor roads, which is where I felt that the SUV would fall apart. But once again, the Urus defies physics. See, the more common sports SUVs usually have to be sprung ultra stiff to offset the weight and center of gravity to make them handle well around corners. This tends to make them ride harsh while still rendering them noticeably inferior to their more low-slung sedan and coupe alternatives. Not the case here.
But now you hear that immediate drop in noise from the exhaust as I switched into the Ego mode, which is set up to be as smooth as possible.
The Ego mode is similar to Audi's individual mode. You can tailor the steering, traction control, suspension, etc. to your preference and save it there. You also have 6 regular driving modes that are all in Italian and I'm going to butcher right now. You have Corsa or race, Neve or snow, Sabbia or sand, Sport, which is, well, sport, Strata or street/normal, and Terra or dirt/earth, which is the more hardcore off-road mode. When dialed for comfort, the Urus rides about as forgiving as a far less capable Q8. It's supple and quiet like a grand touring car. I wouldn't call it plush or S-Class quiet, yet these roads really didn't phase the cabin. You get all the performance of a sports car with the ride quality of a luxury car and the practicality of an SUV.
The fact that you can ride on 23-inch wheels through a road that's far from smooth is insane. It really is a testament to good dampening. Whenever I saw that this vehicle originally came out in, 2019, I thought it was kind of an easy card from Lamborghini to pull. The same way that when Porsche was kind of struggling, and Lamborghini wasn't struggling the same way that Porsche was whenever they released the Cayenne originally in the early 2000s. It was a cash grab for them. People were looking for a more practical vehicle, but they still wanted Porsche's prestige. And I kind of was thinking that the Lamborghini would be the same way. I thought this would be more along the routes of a rebadged RSQ8, but I don't really think that is so much the case. If you're looking at the price itself, it's twice as much, and really it's just taking you from the 8/10 of the RSQ8 to the 10/10 of the Urus. This is the max, amount of sport that you can really get into an SUV. It can still be a comfortable vehicle that you can drive daily. This is by far the most expensive car that I've driven, and I'm more than confident driving it around a rougher road. Except it's still, when you need it to, can handle in ways that you think are not physically possible for a SUV. Now, granted, I'm not pushing it on a track, and I'm not really even pushing it anywhere close to where it could go, but the level of confidence here is unparalleled to pretty much anything that has this kind of ride height.
And when it comes to reliability, since this engine and transmission are used in a variety of vehicles, it's pretty dependable for an exotic, and I was not able to find anything big wrong with it outside of a few recalls. Plus, every new Urus comes with a fully transferable, unlimited 3-year bumper-to-bumper warranty that includes basic maintenance. The Urus is the ultra performance SUV. My only real complaint with the Urus is that if you compare it to a car like the Aston Martin DBX, you begin to notice that it is not as individual as it could be because it shares too much with the Audi. I could see this issue popping up before I even reviewed it, and it really wasn't a problem until I came across the DBX. Even though I still prefer the Lambo interior, the DBX just felt like something I'd never sat in before. Like, it was a little more special despite being worse in my opinion. Maybe if you haven't spent much time in a recent Audi, this wouldn't be a factor. Overall, the Lamborghini Urus defied what I thought an SUV could do, which it should. To answer my initial question, the Urus is not worth double the RSQ8. To state the obvious, these kinds of cars are not about value. They're about achieving another level of performance and leaving a lasting impression. As someone who's never driven a Lamborghini or Ferrari before, I feel like if you drive an exotic car for the first time ever and your initial thought isn't "how is this possible?", then that brand has some work to do. To that extent, this has succeeded, and if you want to take advice from someone who drives a 10-year-old Mitsubishi and eats canned chili, I more than recommend the Lamborghini Urus. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the review, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Also, sorry, I probably pronounced Urus like 20 different ways, and really all I know for sure is that it's not called Urus. Have a good one.